In the United Kingdom, every region has its own fruit tree story, and each area has developed over hundreds of years their own cultivars and their own orchard styles. During my recent trip to the United Kingdom, I was lucky enough to visit a town called Ludlow. And this is a beautiful old market town that has those old-fashioned narrow lanes, buildings that are so historic from hundreds of years ago, and even an old castle from the Middle Ages. I went on a walk through the town and found myself in an area filled with gorgeous old homes. And on one of the brick walls outside the homes, it said, apple trees. Right beside that was a vintage garden chair, metal white garden chair. And there was a box of apples on it. And the box had a sign saying, please help yourself. So these were homegrown apples that had been grown in the garden of this house. It reminded me that in England, fruit trees aren't really just part of the landscape. They're part of everyday life. So in this episode, I'm taking you on a journey, and we're going to explore how fruit tree culture continues to thrive in the United Kingdom, from formal collections of fruit trees to regenerative orchards, and even to community farms. Our first stop is the Wisley RHS garden in Surrey. It's home to one of the country's most impressive collections of apples, pears, plums, and figs, and that includes heritage cultivars and modern cultivars as well. There I met Jim Arbery, who's cared for these trees for more than 40 years. Hello.
Hiya.
It's really nice to be here. Can you start off, just tell me, what is your name and what do you do?
I'm Jim Arbery. I'm RHS horticultural specialist, essentially fruit specialist. So I particularly deal with a lot of the technical issues with fruit and do some instruction for students and visitors and staff.
How long have you been doing this job?
Came in 1982 when things were different. Control of pest and diseases using pesticides and sprays. That gradually changed as we went more into what you'd call integrated pest management. In the last few years, they've stopped actually using pesticides altogether and fertilizers.
Tell me about the main fruit collections that you have.
We have apples and pears and plums are tree fruits, so some of them are freestanding orchard trees as bush trees, and some of those were planted 1949, 1950 when the collection was first established here.
The bush trees Jim talks about are vase-shaped with branches that start just a few feet from the ground to make them easy to harvest. But the standard trees have a very different shape. Their first branches don't start until about 6 feet up the trunk. Tell me about this structure. What kind of structure is this?
This is what we would refer to as a standard tree, so it's got a tall stem 6 feet or more before the branches start. And they were grown in traditional orchards, and one of the reasons for the tall stem was because they would be undergrazed, often with sheep, at certain times of year. So you needed to get the branches up above the reach of the sheep, who'd obviously like to eat the smaller branches and possibly fruit. So that's why they were originally grown that way. And they make a lovely tree, that sort of height.
But how do you harvest it?
Yeah, when you're eating and cooking apples, you need a long ladder. With cider apples, a lot of them are harvested by shaking the tree and picking them off the ground, or rather using machines to pick them off the ground.
While both the bush trees and the standards are shaped for practical reasons, in another part of the garden, the trees are not just productive. They are living works of art.
The train trees we're doing around the World Food Garden are actually based on some of the French designs, and France and Belgium is where a lot of those were developed, but they have been grown in this country for a long time, particularly in walled gardens in the past, the big grand walled gardens. But they're also really good for growing in smaller gardens because you can grow them against walls and fences. So when you've actually only got quite a small garden, they're ideal, many of them, to grow. So they've certainly got a very modern use really in our gardens of today.
At the Wisley Garden, what inspired me most wasn't just the fruit trees and the extensive gardens. It was the passion and dedication of the people who nurture this place every day.
So, hello, my name is Annie Butler and I am a former student of the Wisley Diploma. I'm now a full member of staff with the edibles team. As part of my course, I made sure to be spending time with specialists here to really look at how can we produce fruit in a holistic way.
How hard is it to grow fruit trees holistically?
Well, I would say probably one of the biggest things that we've experienced at Wisley since we stopped spraying is that not spraying means that you might have this real upsurge in your insect damage in 1 year. But we're looking at that integrated pest management. We're really trying to think about, okay, well, what if we go and pick some off by hand, but leave some for our native birds to pick off themselves? And so, yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, I'd say. And also, how are you managing your orchard floor? So we're really into meadows here, but it's, really keeping on top of that management. That can also be a challenge in a busy time of the year.
For Annie, fruit trees don't exist in isolation. Meadows, pollinators, and birds are all part of the orchard community. And she sees another kind of community growing too, between people.
I worked with some charities in the UK where I went to spend some time in their kitchen gardens and their allotments to look at how growing food together can build communities. My area of interest was people seeking asylum in the UK. It's quite a big topic at the moment, and what I found is that you really can build some beautiful connections in between people who've just arrived in the UK and need to kind of find their way, and also for host communities as well.
And what do you think it is about fruit trees and gardening that really helps people to connect with each other?
I think that food is the great unifier, it's so important. When you plant a fruit tree, you're investing in your future. And so if you've just arrived in a country and you plant a fruit tree, well, come on, I think that speaks for itself.
I really loved what Annie said. Planting a fruit tree really is investing in the future. And that philosophy also guides my next guest, who is Lindsay Engers of Chiltern Heritage Orchards. Lindsay was a guest on a previous episode of this show. After you listen to this episode, you may want to go back and learn a lot more about his philosophy. Lindsay's orchard is a living example of how local cultivars and healthy soil can transform the way we grow fruit. So tell me, where are we?
We're in the Chilterns in the UK, and we're pretty high up. We're about 620 feet above sea level.
Okay.
And as you can see, we're in a very sunny nook. And this is a certified organic orchard where we grow a mixed range of heritage, very rare, and maybe not so rare, fruits for restaurants. My name's Lindsay Engers. I'm the owner and founder of Chiltern Heritage Orchards. It started in 2016 with the idea of growing heritage fruit in some form or other for the public. And we thought originally we would start off with a cider and perry orchard, but we quickly realised it was much more likely we would sell heritage fruits to possibly restaurants and people that are interested in heritage. So we launched that business and we planted lots and lots of really rare, almost extinct, but very successful in the past fruit trees. Apples, pears, plums, damsons, greengages, cherries, enormous range.
Now, when you're planting these rare varieties, often they're considered harder to grow. So how do you deal with the challenges of growing fruit trees that are not modern, disease-resistant, easier to grow?
There are many myths in fruit growing, and one of the myths that we've busted, I think, is that different fruit trees require special treatment if they're more prone to a disease. What they all require is a really healthy microbiome and an organic systemic protocol, which they get. And once they get that, there's not been a tree that we can't grow successfully. Even more difficult ones seem to respond equally well.
for years we've been talking about with humans, eat yogurt. You have these organisms inside your body that will make you healthier.
Yeah.
And so for a fruit tree, it doesn't have a tummy. It doesn't,
No.
And so its microbiome, I guess, is in the soil.
Absolutely, the root systems. And then within the plant itself, there's a microbiome on the leaves, there's a microbiome in the stem, even within the fruit itself. Everything is full of fungi and bacteria, particularly if it's organically grown. That's what makes it work.
How do you make the soil so welcoming so that it can support fruit trees?
Well, it depends where you start from. We started from unploughed land, which was pasture. It was just a pasture really for many, many years, hundreds of years. So it never really been subjected to disturbance. So the less disturbance, the better. But if it has been disturbed, sow grass. I would grass it down with as many different diverse species as you can. I'd mix wildflowers in. And I would then very quickly start to plant it up with the protocols that we talk about. The rock dust and the friendly fungi that we add to the roots, and obviously the seaweed sprays, and that's pretty much it. The ecology of that area will start to come in.
One of the biggest problems that people face is drought these days.
Yeah.
It's an issue because, if it doesn't rain and you don't have an irrigation system, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, when we plant, we put a membrane around the roots, which we talked about in the podcast, and that semi-permeable membrane gives us between 4 and 5 weeks of drought-proof. We've had an incredibly dry summer. It hasn't rained really for 6 months, from the end of February through to September. None of the trees in this orchard that are cropping have been watered. Some of the very young pears around the barn have been a few times, but nothing that's got fruit on that's actually commercially been harvested has had any additional water added to it.
And I've also noticed, you wander around the orchard, you see all the beautiful cultivars, the healthy fruit, healthy leaves, no codling moth, no apple maggot.
No.
What's going on there?
Well, there's a number of things that are going on. I mean, the most important thing is that we have a huge number of predators that live in the orchard permanently. So we have them predating on the moths themselves. So the bats, for example, predate on moths. We have dragonflies that fly around, they catch the adult moths. We have a huge number of spiders which catch the moths in their webs, particularly in the spring. We have predators that will capture the moths if they're overwintering on the trees or if they're living in the soil.
What do you find is special about growing fruit trees here in this part of the world?
I think what's special about the Chilterns in particular is the very high light levels that we have in the hills. So that makes a huge difference to the fruit quality. We also experience very low temperatures compared to the rest of lowland England. So we can, have much longer freezing periods. So we do benefit from that because that gives us a much longer sort of fruit chill, which we need about 1,000 hours of fruit chill. We get that quite easily. We also have soils which are silica and calcium rich. So both of those nutrients are very important to fruit quality.
Okay, piece of advice for anybody starting on their fruit tree adventure.
Okay, always try whatever possible to be as diverse as you can. But grow what works locally. Do your research first. Read the books. Look back at the archives. Where you live has probably got a very interesting old fruit culture. Use that. That's your best friend. Don't try and use modern cultivars if they don't work in your area. Use cultivars that have been road tested. You'll find your way through much, much quicker.
From the scientific and ecological world of the Chilterns, I headed southwest to see how fruit trees can be grown as a form of art. I visited the Newt in Somerset. This is a luxurious country estate that combines history, design, and horticulture in breathtaking ways. My tour guide was Arthur Cole, head of programs at the Newt in Somerset.
We are here in the heart of Somerset, deep Somerset. This is Hadspin Estate, the Newt. We have this Georgian mansion in the Palladian style. This was built between 1742 and 1747 and replaced a house that had been built in 1687 and was completed in 1690. And so if you look immediately south from the front door down, you get this avenue here. That's what we call the South Avenue. South Avenue actually was first originally planted in 1687 when the first person who got here, a London lawyer called William Player, arrived, and he wanted to show off that he was educated, sophisticated, a worldly man, a dedicated follower of fashion. So if you're going to buy an estate in Somerset in the late 17th century, you're going to put in a pretty French-looking garden.
For more than 300 years, this estate was celebrated for its gardens, but it remained strictly private. That changed in 2013 when South African entrepreneurs Koos Becker and Karen Roos bought the property and opened it to the public. They restored and expanded the gardens, they planted a cider orchard, and they added 2 luxury hotels and 3 restaurants and a number of shops. All of these things were united by one theme, according to Arthur.
We are a lot of different things. And to truly understand what that all comes in together as being, you have to think about what's our motivation, what's our intention, what's our driver. And that is creativity, that is imagination, and laying that out across this beautiful landscape that is Somerset.
So let's talk about the landscape. I've noticed that fruit trees play a huge role here. Why are fruit trees important? What role do they play?
Well, the first thing we have to look at is our climate. We're here in the southwest of England. We have a very moist and wet and quite mild climate. This does not lend itself to growing arable crops. So over the last few centuries, and probably even before, where they couldn't grow the cash crops of wheat and barley, we would grow what we could, which was grass and trees. So this is where you'll get the main part of your dairy being produced for the UK and a huge amount of your apples being produced.
There is so much to see at the Newt, but at the heart of it all is the Parabola Garden, an incredible circular walled garden showcasing espalier apple trees in many shapes and forms.
Welcome to the Parabola. All right, come in, Susan. Here we've got, we've arranged the apples in here, in the Parabola, in the walled garden, by their counties. So down at this place, down in this area, we've got Devon. And so you can see it laid out on these. So these are all Devon varieties. We've got Dorset varieties as well, Gloucestershire there. And as you move through the maze, you move through the counties. It's not done geographically, it's done alphabetically. So you won't find necessarily Cornwall next to Devon.
For anyone who loves espalier, this place is a dream. In the Hampshire section, the local cultivars are grown as step-over trees. These are tiny apple trees planted just a foot or so apart, and they'll never be allowed to grow taller than knee height. Despite their tiny size, they still produce fruit. It's a playful and practical way to edge a garden path or to line the walkway to your front door. Further inside the maze, near the water feature, the Somerset cultivars are trained into an apple tunnel. Then in the Northamptonshire section, the local varieties are woven into a Belgian fence, a precise lattice of crossing branches that creates an elegant geometric pattern. And there's more. Across the Parabola Garden, you'll find apple trees trained into all kinds of sculptural forms, like a perfect globe or a three-dimensional goblet. Even outside the walled garden, espalier trees continue to appear. The circular walls are covered with fan-shaped fruit trees, and as you wander towards the on-site shop, maybe to pick up a bottle of the Newt's own cider, you'll spot 2 whimsical designs. One espalier is shaped like a cider bottle, and the other one beside it is shaped like an apple. Even the stone used to build internal supporting walls helps to support the health of the fruit trees, according to Arthur.
The structure we have in place, this is created with dry stone walls. So there's no concrete in here. This is all a local stone called forest marble. Somerset stone, which was created about 160 million years ago when Somerset was under a warm, shallow equatorial sea. And this is made up of dead sea creatures. That gives us a slightly alkaline soil, a calcareous soil, and this works. It seems to work pretty well with the apples. They seem to like it as long as we can give them enough space to move down into. And this is why these guys are looking pretty healthy.
Every detail here, even the soil, supports the health and artistry of these trees. But maintaining them is a huge task. All of the fruit trees at the Newt are grafted, meaning that the desired variety or cultivar is joined onto the roots of another compatible tree called a rootstock. The rootstock determines the tree's eventual size and vigor. The European apple cultivars here are grafted onto a dwarfing rootstock called M9, which helps to keep them compact. But the English espalier apple trees are grafted onto MM106. This is a semi-dwarfing, vigorous rootstock that naturally wants to grow up to 15 feet tall. Each tree was purchased as a 1-year-old feather, a young grafted tree with a few side branches. But every year, these vigorous trees naturally want to put on a lot of growth. Left on their own, they'd quickly shoot skyward. So, how do you keep these trees so beautifully compact and controlled? Arthur says the secret is simple: judicious and copious pruning.
We prune these 4 times a year. So these were planted as 1-year-old feathered maidens back in 2017. And now we're into, kind of pushing 2026. They don't look like the biggest trees. That's because these guys are getting hit hard every 4 times a year. And we like to check that growth because it's part of the form. Some of these varieties are really vigorous, some aren't. They're all on the same rootstock, but some of them will just shoot off. So you will see our team in here 4 times a year pruning these guys back and trying to concentrate the fruiting spurs as low down the plant as possible. We don't have any pesticides, we have no fungicides, we have no herbicides. It's quite labour intensive, but it's rewarding as well. It means that any of the children can come in here and happily pick these apples without the fear of any pesticide residue.
The espalier designs reflect centuries of fruit training tradition. Every inch of space is used to show the endless possibilities of growing fruit trees.
So the designs that we're showing in terms of the fruit training and the fruit pruning that is going on here really show, again, our intention. What is the purpose of having this collection? Is it just to hold on to old heritage varieties? Not so. As you've noticed, Susan, the form of these plants is clearly integral to what we're doing within this collection. The different forms of espalier, everything from Belgian fence to stepovers, single cordons, double cordons. We want people to come here and be inspired and be delighted, but also to understand what is our niche as the Newt within horticulture. Nobody is the best at horticulture. There's no such thing. Even if you're Kew or Wisley, nobody is the best at horticulture. However, you can be the best at a specific discipline within horticulture. And we want people either in the Americas, Africa, the whole world to say, where's the best place to go for trained fruit? The Newt.
After seeing the artistry of the fruit trees at the Newt, I wanted to visit a place where fruit trees connect people, not just through beauty, but through shared purpose. So I headed to Hampshire, near the historic city of Winchester, to visit Highbridge Community Farm. It's a grassroots project where volunteers grow food together, they share skills, and they care for the fruit trees and gardens as a community.
Hi, I'm Andrew Ross, and I was one of the 10 people who helped to start this community farm back in 2010.
My name's Penny Valander, and I'm the experienced grower here, and I was one of the founding people for the community farm.
We were all members of Eastleigh Transition Network, and in those days we knew we had to move away from using oil because of its impact on CO2 levels.
We found the site by writing an article for the local borough newspaper saying that we were looking for somewhere to grow some vegetables. The local farmer who owns this land, he saw it, contacted us and said he had 1 3/4 acres and would we be interested? We came and saw it and said, yes, definitely we're interested.
We produced a flyer which we took round about 8,000 homes in the area, and we got over 100 people who were interested, and they signed up.
Originally it was just the 1 3/4 acres which is on the other side, and there was nothing there at all. The farmer had grown sweet corn on it every year and just dug it in. So he ploughed it for us.
We split this area into 20 plots, and in the first year we had 10 teams with 10 team leaders, and they were growing one crop each. So one crop grew potatoes, and one crop grew parsnips, another carrots, another beans and peas. Courgettes did incredibly well. Now, we had none of the infrastructure here that we've got now, the sheds and things. We just had one old army tent, and at the end of the first year we packed that army tent with courgettes that had grown the size of marrows just because we just couldn't get rid of them.
We had very little experience. We had no watering system there at all. So if we wanted to water the crops we were growing, we'd come down to the pond with a watering can, fill the watering can up and walk back up to the plots again, which was okay if you were on the plots nearest to the pond, but if you were on the far end, that wasn't so good. And over the last 3 years, we've been getting grants to make it a little bit more efficient for watering. We have acquired the big plastic containers called IBCs, and we had one on each plot, and we bought a pump which we put into the pond, and we pump water into the IBC, so that's made it much easier.
These are the roots of our courgette plants. So we cut the roots off, and because they take so long to mulch down, we actually put them underneath the fruit trees, and they provide a nice mulch and a bit of a longer term fertilise.
So let's see you do it.
I'm Robin, and I'm from one of the vegetable growing teams. There's also an extensive fruit team, and also there's a soft fruit team. We've also got a polytunnel team and we call them the A team. They actually build all our structures here. So we've got polytunnels and all sorts of things like that, and they're responsible for that side of the farm. We've got 20 vegetable patches here, and we have teams, and each team looks after 2 vegetable patches. And this year we've been growing, amongst other things, butternut squashes.
How does membership work here?
Altogether at the moment we've got about 120 stakeholders. A stakeholder can be a family, or it can be a single person, or it can be 2 friends even. And each stakeholder pays a stake at the beginning of the year, and for that you can come here, and the idea is that you work a minimum of 10 hours a month on the plots. Lots of people work many more hours than that, but that's the minimum, for which you can buy a share of the goods that are produced. So it's a true cooperative.
We have the apple trees and other trees here, the top fruits. They came about right at the beginning in 2010, when I was thinking when I retired I would go and help an apple seller who sells trees to the public. I was there one day and he said to me, I'm going to clear this area of fruit trees. So I said, how are you doing it? He said, I'm going to get a bulldozer in. I said, if I get my friends in from the farm, could we have the trees? So we went, and over a couple of days we dug up 200 apple trees of 60 different varieties, and we brought them back to the farm and we planted them in the apple avenue and in an orchard at the bottom there. an orchard behind the pond over there and an orchard in the next field. And that's where the apples came. So they've now been in 15 years. They're doing fantastically well, and we're getting marvellous crops.
My name is Daniel, and I'm in the fruit team. So basically anything to do with the apple trees, from pruning to harvesting to anything that's got to be done.
And how many years have you been doing this?
I retired in 2019 and I was looking for something to fill my retirement. And so I come here usually now twice a week. It's nice to get stuff that is produced locally, which is, we don't use any chemicals, you know, and it's good for you to be outdoors, you know. And I don't think it's heavy work, sometimes a little bit, you know, but, you know, you do half a day, do a few hours, you know, whatever you can do. There's people that come once a week, do a few hours, and then especially on a Saturday, we got all the produce there, and you can see, you know, what is being produced. It's lovely.
My name's Anna. I'm on the soft fruit team, but I joined the whole fruit team about 8 years ago. We had an amazing man called Andy Waterman who used to live 6 months of the year in New Zealand and then 6 months of the year here. And he taught me how to prune the trees. But he said that I just needed to go and feel each tree and see how it needed to be pruned once I'd learnt the basics. I'd go from one to the other and I'd have to stand back and look at the shape of it and look at the feel of it. Each one needed something different. It was really, really odd. This tree we planted for Andy Waterman 2 years ago because he died. So he liked to have the odd drink or two. So we have planted a cider apple tree, especially in his memory, and it's doing rather well. We have a picture of him. There he is on the label. So we always remember him. We had many happy times in Winchester on pub crawls.
When you started this all those years ago, 15 years ago, could you have imagined what it has turned into?
No, I suppose not really. It's just kept going steadily. We wanted to be sustainable, so we didn't ask for grants from anybody because we want to be able to do it on our own. We could have had grants which would have made things move quicker.
It's a great community. Everybody works together here and we share our knowledge. So the people on the fruit team are incredibly knowledgeable. Our experienced growers are extremely knowledgeable and they help the team leaders with anything that they don't know. There's so much that you can learn and you just keep on learning.
We have a sustainable community here, and probably the best thing about it are the benefits to the individual members of the community who get their fresh organic fruit and vegetables and also get exercise and companionship and friendship.
That community farm literally brought everything together. It is proof that fruit trees do so much more than feed us. They build community, they build connection, and they bring us so much joy. I met so many amazing people during this trip, from the dedicated team at Wisley. I spent time with Lindsay, this amazing regenerative grower in the Chilterns. I learned so much about the artistry and the approach of the Newt in Somerset. And I was really honored to meet those behind the Highbridge farm. Each place showed me a different way that fruit trees can enrich our lives. So that's it for today's journey. Whether you have an orchard or a backyard fruit tree, planting a fruit tree really is an investment in the future, and it's one that keeps giving for generations to come. The UK trip really inspired me, and I have been preparing for a while to write my next book. This one is on fruit tree garden design. So if you're passionate about fruit trees and you'd like to be part of my book development team, I would love to have your help. You can sign up at orchardpeople.com/newbook. That's all one word. So what's involved is you would get access to an early draft of the book. You will be able to ask me all of your questions. I want to make this book like my other books. I want them to answer all your questions before you even have time to ask them. And so I have literally dozens and dozens of people read my early copies, and I'd love it if you wanted to be one of them. If you sign up, you will get an early copy of the book, and you will get a free ebook version of the book when it's ready to go and ready to publish. You'll have the opportunity to be one of the first people to review the book on Amazon. And if you sign up, you will get a series of audio diaries from me, and that will be documenting my creative process as I make this book. So you'll learn all about the behind the scenes of what goes on when I am creating a new book. So I'd love it if you could sign up. Go to orchardpeople.com/new book and join me. And by the way, I got really wonderful news recently. My recent book, Fruit Tree Grafting for Everyone, just won a gold medal for the best reference technical book of 2024 from GardenComm. That's the Garden Communicators organization that I'm a member of. So I'm really happy with that. So again, if you'd love to help me with this book, come and join me. Go to orchardpeople.com/new book and sign up today. Get my audio diaries, get an early copy when it's ready. And thank you so much for watching today's show. I'll see you next month. Bye for now.